Loud But Silent is the last artwork that comes out of my research, which is called The Lights Which Can Be Heard, which is, as you said, like a research project around the topic of the sound of the northern lights. And it's an experimental film and installation that will be presented at Sonic Axe, in which I, with my collaborator Rob Stammes, we try to record with a microphone the sound during northern lights. And at the same time, we explore the environment and testimonies from that we collect all around the Arctic of people that heard the sounds during northern lights, and also grounding it into the context of Svalbard with topics such as geopolitical tension, the limits of perception, and the relationship of human with the Arctic environment.
He tenido encuentros, creo que es prudente llamarles así, encuentros con auroras boreales muy peculiares. Y cabe mencionar que esas semanas se suscitaron eventos muy anormales. Para llegar a casa hay un pequeño puente y debajo de este puente corre un río. Justo cuando cruzaba el puente, escuché un ruido absorbente, literalmente absorbente, muy suave, y pensé que era el tren que venía porque están cerca las vías del tren. Me percaté que no era así, no venía ningún tren, y no era el sonido del río. Noté que las auroras boreales brillaban con una ferviente intensidad anormal para el lugar donde yo vivo, y eran tan intensas y bailaban y se conectaban y se desconectaban como en una danza, como las nubes, como las personas que se encuentran para separarse.
I came across a book once, which is called The Northern Lights from Methodology to Space Research, which is a book from late 70s, early 80s. I don't remember the exact date. And it was a book in which it was explaining how the Northern Lights were perceived by communities all around the world since ancient times. And in that book from the 80s, there is like a chapter, not even a chapter, a paragraph about the sound of Northern Light. And that directly caught my attention. In that book, they were just saying like, yeah, this is just folklore, basically. But then I started to make more research about that and found out that there is a lot of testimonies about this. Earliest research was made in 1776 in Canada, and the latest one, or like the most recent one, was in Siberia in Russia in 2008. And what was struck me in those all research is like we were talking about different time in history, different location in the world, and all those testimonies talk about the same thing. We have like literally words that will come back from one testimony to another. So this is all this research originally started, and I wanted to see by myself, or like actually not see, but hear by myself, if there was actually a sound. And I've been researching that topic for 4 years now. Did a lot of field research based on a theory that most likely, perhaps what people hear is like natural waves, radio waves that are being produced by the northern lights. So with specific antennas capturing those and trying to, at the same time, listen with microphones and see if we can capture that also. That's something that really struck me in this research project on the first hand, is like how northern lights are known for the Western world. It's like we sent scientists in for like maybe French or British scientists for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month, let's say 2 months in the Arctic. And then they came and they said like, well, we saw northern lights, we made drawing, we took photographs. but we didn't hear anything. So no, the people here, this is like folklore, because we as scientists, we didn't hear that. But I find it so strange to think that how someone being in the field for like such a short period can draw conclusions about a phenomenon that people witness for centuries and generations, because people live there all year long. And for me, I think it's a bit of a criticism I have towards science, that field research is done on a specific location at a specific time. But it's, how can you compare that to knowledge of people that live there continuously and that are more sensitive to their environment? And that's also what I try to bring in my projects, like those different ways of thinking and producing knowledge, actually. Story goes that the first time I went into the Arctic to work on this project was in 2021, already 4 years ago, in October 2021. I went for a month on an island of the archipelago of Vesteralen, which is an archipelago just above Lofoten in the Arctic, in Norway. And I came back with my first recording of very low frequency radio waves during northern lights. Came back to the Netherlands and started to talk about that with friends. Mark Eiserman, a really good friend and collaborator of mine, told me like you should reach out to Hans Kulk in Den Bosch for Willem II studio. I reached out to him. We had a meeting and it was like, you should reach out to my good friend Rob Stammes, who lives in Lofoten for 15 years. So Rob Stammes is 73 years old, amateur radio astronomer, originally from Holland, but based in the Lofoten for 15 years, working on the topic of the Northern Lights in general, but also very much on the sound related to Northern Lights. And I reached out to him. I remember I called him, explaining my project. He was like, well, I'm working on this topic for 15 years. So it was a direct match, and luckily enough, in February 2022, I was invited for an exhibition in the area, so I paid him a visit, and I have to say we became really good friends ever since. We call each other and we collaborate a lot together. So in general, my work as an artist and researcher is about disappearing sound, disappearing cosmologies, disappearing sonic rituals. So it's a lot of work in the field, going to different places in the world where sounds are disappearing. And I really mean sound in a larger sense. It can be culturally made sound, like traditional music or rituals, but it can be also a natural phenomenon that are linked to specific cosmologies. And in the case of the Northern Lights, it's if we think that theory about the Northern Lights, the sound that people hear during Northern Lights is related to natural radio waves, it's becoming very difficult to capture these natural radio waves because of man-made communication and the electromagnetic pollution in general overall in the world. And in my work, I've been always very interested in not only documenting this process or like capturing, but also trying to preserve this in different medium. And I don't really like the term preserving because it can sound very, I never have a right term because preserving can sound very, how can I say that? Very pretentious. But just like record it in different ways than we would normally do traditionally, like putting on a vinyl, on a tape or digital file, but working with materials that can make sense with either the tradition of the communities I'm working with or the geospecificities of place I'm working in. So in my work, I really try to make bridges between like disciplines that are usually not put together, let's say, and especially by using new technology, like to also discover or like I would not say to confirm other cosmologies, but like to put into dialogue new technology with indigenous cosmologies. And for me, it's very important to show that we had this very rational way of thinking about the world, and suddenly we have those tools that, especially in terms of perception, we can go a bit further than we can. Like also with sensitive microphone, we can listen carefully, but with antennas, we can capture radio waves. With microscope, we can go on the microscopic level, and so on and so on. But then you realize that wait, actually, there's a lot of different cosmologies that are, with the use of technology, you can really relate to, and you can see some link, and you're like, actually, why Western science has denied this for me for so long? So for me, it's an ongoing dialogue, it's an ongoing conversation and debate about those gray areas of science. It's a collaborative work with Louise Hernandez, who is a filmmaker, and Erwin Barbès, an artist from France. And we really try to play with what is the limit, what is the limits of perception, like what is real, what is unreal, what is, because we have these limits of perception, especially in the testimonies that people share with us. Everyone talks about like, it almost feels like it's pressure on my ear, it was very faint, and it's for me, it's a work about also like how to attune to your own environment, how you listen carefully, and also this position, like who I am as a French artist based in the Netherlands, going in the Arctic, spending some weeks there, and listening to the environment compared to people that are there constantly. Maybe they have much more better hearing than I do, and it's not probably, I'm sure they have, because they are more attuned to their environment. So it's a lot around those questions, of course.